So let's kick it off. Thank you again for your willingness to meet with me, talk a little bit more
Sure.
about what your transition to an EV has looked like. My name is Shakaya. I work with Generation180, as I'm sure you're aware, based on our email threads. And I'm a program associate for our Electrify Your Ride campaign.
Great.
Um,
Great. And what is the 180 campaign coalition?
So I can, yeah, no worries. I'll tell you a little bit about Generation180.
Generation 180.
Yes, so we are a national nonprofit. We work to inspire others and prepare them and equip them to take clean energy actions. And so we do that through various campaigns. One of them is Electrify Your Ride. We are launching an Electrify Your Life campaign. And the Electrify Your Ride and Life campaign focuses on, especially the ride one, is individuals that are taking those next steps to transition to an EV.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have a ambassador network program of EV owners, and we just give them a platform to talk about their experience. It gives that opportunity to myth bust,
Mm-hmm.
especially when there are, you know, uh, when there are discrepancies in what folks think about EVs. And so it's that opportunity for them to learn about it, what it is. And then Electrify Your Life is a kind of a spinoff of that. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's what clean energy actions have you taken outside of driving, right? We want to
Yeah.
acknowledge that for some, the EV may not come first. Other things may come first, like
Right.
upgrading a heat pump or
Right.
in solar in your home, etc.
Right.
You have a few other campaigns, one that focuses on K through 12 schools transitioning to solar.
Mm-hmm.
We do comedy as well. So we have a climate comedy cohort with our comms team, and they partner with American University, and basically it's a cohort of comedy members that are up and coming, and they're teaching them how to talk about climate in a funny way. It doesn't, with like moving away from that doom and gloom. It doesn't have
Mm-hmm.
sad and boring, and using spin on it. And so
Right.
that's a little bit of what we do here at Generation180.
Okay. Great. That sounds great. And where are you based, in DC or where?
So I'm actually based in Virginia. So
Okay.
our team members are all over. So I'm here in Virginia. We have some in Atlanta, Tennessee, Maryland. So we're all over. Um,
Okay.
so yeah.
Okay. That's great. I'm going to get a glass of water. I'll be
Yes.
right back. I'm just surprised I've never heard of you, because I've been doing this work for a long time.
Yeah, we work nationally. We are starting to do way more work in North Carolina. But a lot of our groundwork, at least with our Electrify Your Ride campaign, has started in Virginia. And now we're at
Okay.
a point where we're like, okay, there's some solidified
Mm-hmm.
data here. And as we went into North Carolina, we kicked it off with a drive electric report, which is the report that Julie Robertson helped us with,
Right.
and etc. And so we're really excited about, well, I'm excited about definitely interviewing you because we kind of want to use this interview as a kickoff. So we are looking to really uplift women in suburban communities, especially in Virginia, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina,
Okay.
um, and just kind of identifying and seeing what that transition to an EV looked like for you, and acknowledging that women sometimes are left out of that discussion. And so how
Mm.
can we uplift them a little bit more, empower them?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited about
Okay.
this interview. And if you want to kick it off, telling a little bit about yourself, and then how long have you been an EV owner, and what make and model do you drive?
Okay. Okay. So I'm Julie Mayfield. I am, for the main purposes of this conversation, a North Carolina state senator. I represent Senate District 49, which is Asheville and most of Buncombe County. Um, my other hat, my sort of day job, is that I work for an environmental advocacy organization called Mountain True, which focuses on the mountains of Western North Carolina. And I'm an environmental attorney, and I've been doing environmental policy advocacy work for over 20 years now. So including clean energy and a range of things related to that. So I bought my first EV in 2017, early 2017. That was a used Nissan Leaf that I got for less than $10,000. It was amazing. My then husband and I purchased that. And I remember on that, when we were test driving it, it was just such an amazing car. I just remember saying, we're going to buy this car, right? Like there's no reason we're not going to buy this car. It was just so incredible. So the Nissan Leaf was first. That was a 2013. So it was I think the first generation Leaf. And I loved that car, and I would still drive that car if it would get me to Raleigh, but it won't. And then my next EV was actually after I got, or in the year that I was running for Senate and knew that I would get elected, I bought a plug-in hybrid. I bought a Chevy Volt. And because I needed to be able to get to Raleigh, but also when I was just driving around town, wanted to be fully electric. And that worked great. I ended up liking that car a lot more than I thought I would.
Right.
And then just earlier this year, I bought a Tesla Model Y when Tesla dropped the prices, and So, and I adore this car.
Exciting. So I want to talk a little bit about, I know you've said that you've been in this career path for almost 20 plus years. What drove that decision to purchase the EV instead of a gas powered car, right? You talked about it, more earlier, being an early adopter, early 2017, 2016 timeframe, and the car being more earlier, like a 2013. And so, it's easy to just buy a gas powered car, right? So what drove that decision, or, drove that decision to purchasing?
Yeah, sure. So again, as an environmental attorney, I'm well aware of the footprint that people leave on the planet. And part of my goal has always been from an environmental standpoint, to leave a very small footprint. And so, I've been a vegetarian for 36 years. I lived in a small, at that time, when I moved to North Carolina, I lived in a small house. It was a silver level green built house. We added solar panels to the house. We shop local. So the way I just think about my life and how to, how can I reduce my footprint everywhere, in how I live and how I travel and how I eat and in how I buy things, and just always try to choose the greenest option. Right. And so when it came time what happened? Why did we do this? I can't even remember. I was driving a Honda Civic. I had been driving a Honda Civic. It was a 12-year-old Honda Civic, and I didn't really drive it very much because I mostly took the bus up here. And I just can't remember what even prompted us to begin looking for a new car. Can't quite remember that. But it was clear, at the time we had a Prius and then my Honda Civic, and we just knew that the next car was going to be an electric vehicle, and I'm never going back. To answer one of the other questions.
Yes. So because you've purchased EVs or plug-in hybrids several times now, did you take advantage of any state or federal rebates or incentives available for EV purchases? And if you did, how impactful were those incentives in your decision making? And maybe they weren't at all. and that's fine too.
Well, the first two, no. I mean, they were both used cars, so there weren't any incentives for those. But it was two things that prompted the purchase of the Tesla earlier this year. It was when Tesla dropped the prices so
Mhm.
dramatically on the Model Y, they dropped it almost $20,000.
Mhm.
And then uh, and then the $7,500 tax credit
Awesome.
from, I don't even remember which federal program that was. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was those two together that made me realize I could get this, what had been a 70 some odd $1,000 car, which I was never going to purchase,
Yes.
um, for in the low 50s, actually without, so, and actually then the $7,500 tax credit drops it even lower
Yeah.
into the into the mid 40s. So it just, yeah, at that point, it was just a no brainer. It's funny. I had been trying to talk my partner and other people into buying it. Like, this is such a great deal. You need to be, you need to go get one of these cars. And then one day I was like, why am I not doing this? I need to do this. I'm
Yeah.
the one who wants an electric vehicle to get me to Raleigh.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I definitely want to go back to that commuting in a little bit, but you talked about making greener decisions over the years, and this has been intentional for you in your lifestyle. Did you get any weird or odd responses from friends or family when you did decide to go electric, or was it like, I figured this was something that you would do based on the decisions you've made? Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Nobody was surprised.
okay, awesome.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit more about that commuting dynamic.
Mhm.
And I've heard you reference Raleigh quite a few times. And so what, as an EV owner, what has the commuting looked like, especially being in the rural part of North Carolina? Um, and and mentioning that you're a legislator, so I imagine you're doing a lot of traveling. Can you talk a
Yeah.
little about that?
Sure. So when the legislature is in session, which is for many months in any given year, um, I drive to Raleigh, every week. So I go down on Monday afternoons and I come back on Thursdays, and that's 250 miles door to door for me, in each direction. Um, so that's the commuting pattern for a lot of my year. The rest of the year, I'm here in Asheville, and I'm just driving around town. Asheville's it's a very small town. And for instance, when I had my Volt, which got, I think it was low 50s, I think was on the battery charge, about 54. Um, I could easily drive a day
Mhm.
without ever switching over to gas, without ever, draining the battery. And sometimes I could even go 2 days. So it, you know, it driving around town, I don't ever do very much. That looks more like sort of a normal person's commuting pattern,
Right.
just a few miles a day. But it is the fact that I've got this gigantic commute to Raleigh every week, that made it, a little more challenging in terms of I was limited in terms of the EVs that I could purchase,
Right.
if I wanted to try to get one that would take me all the way without charging, without having to stop to charge.
And I was going to say, so I know now that you have the Tesla, it's a little bit more convenient, right? Because Tesla's charging infrastructure is just massive.
Oh
Um,
my gosh,
but going back
amazing.
to when you had the Leaf and you had the plug-in, um, you know, was it harder to find those charging stations? Or I know, like you're saying, like I was able to make it, right? But like,
Yeah.
was there ever a time where you were like, if I needed to stop, right, where would I stop in this massive commute to Raleigh?
Well, so in the Volt, of course, you've got a gas tank.
Yeah.
So there was never any, unless I was out of gas, which I never was. There was never any fear of running out. It didn't matter if the battery ran out because I had a gas tank.
Mhm.
And the Leaf, I just never took on any trip that would, be that would threaten. Although there were definitely times when I cut it closer than I wanted to, rolling back in to my house with, fewer than 5 miles left on the battery.
Okay.
So, and I've actually done that on the Tesla too. I have rolled up to a charging station with 3 miles left on the Tesla. I've done that twice, actually. It is not, that is terrifying.
I can imagine, because there's no backup, there's no gas to kick in, right?
Nope.
So it's
Nope.
electric, yeah.
Nope.
So I want to switch gears a little bit. And as I mentioned earlier in our discussion of us kicking off our Suburban Woman campaign, women are generally underrepresented as EV owners across the country.
Mm-hmm.
So why do you think this is, especially as you are a woman EV owner and has made, clean energy actions over the years? And what advice do you have for women considering to make that switch?
Mm-hmm. Um, I so one thing is, I think women just think less about cars than men do, right? Women, I mean, I'm just going to go stereotypical here, but I am that stereotypical woman. I don't care about cars. I don't care about what the engine is. I don't care about, I mean, when I bought my very first car, it was that Honda Civic that I mentioned, and the salesman was, as we were driving around, he was like, oh, he said, oh, this car has the tightest turning radius of any car in its class. And I literally turned to him and I said, I don't care. I just I just want to know if it's fun to drive and if
Yeah.
I like it. That's it. Like, I don't care about any of the technical stuff. Don't care. Um, and so I think a lot of women are like that. They just want a car that they think is safe, that's going to, be reliable. I do think women think a lot about fuel efficiency and cost. Um, the thing, so I would say up until recently, it's also been the reason that I was able to make that transition to electric vehicles is because I had another car, right? There was another person in the household who had a gas car, and that in the first case it was a Prius.
Mhm.
And then with my Volt, I had a gas backup.
Yeah.
So I think, again, until recently, if you're a single person,
Mhm.
it's been hard to say, I'm just going to have an electric vehicle.
Right.
Because then if you have to make a long trip, you either, you gotta think about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Especially if it's not a Tesla, for the reasons that you mentioned, because the charging infrastructure is, it's dismal for other cars. And if I have to charge on my way back to or from Raleigh, it's a 10-minute stop,
Right.
as opposed to, I mean, hours that it would be for a level 2 charger. And between my house and Raleigh, I think there's only one public level 2 charging, sort of fleet of charger. Anyway, it's like, it's not feasible.
Yeah.
So if you're a single woman, you're probably not going to do that.
Mhm.
And if you're partnered, it may be that your partner wants the cool technologically advanced, car.
Right.
So
Makes sense.
yeah. And they do cost more. I mean, that's the other thing is, again, if you're a single woman and you're cost conscious, investing in an EV, especially a new EV,
Mhm.
is, that's a big, I mean, this car was a big leap for me. I would have never thought that I would have spent, 50 something $1,000s on a car. Insane.
Yeah.
But it's
Imagine the numbers go up even higher, right? If you are a parent, a mom, a woman that is a mom, and you're thinking
right.
about if you have multiple kids and they're in multiple activities, so then that barrier is even higher for you as
That's
well,
right. That's
um,
right.
when thinking about that price. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And you just have to have, some flexibility in your schedule. I now give myself a little bit more time when I'm going to Raleigh, because I know that I'm going to have to stop. Well, again, I don't have to stop. I can charge it up to 100% and I can get there.
Yeah.
Um, but generally I would always stop at least once, rest stop, get something to eat, um, and it generally charges up again in that 10-minute
Right.
time, enough to get me to town.
Yeah. Okay. So let's switch gears a little and talk about the North Carolina economic dynamic, right? So
Mhm.
what role might EVs play in bolstering that North Carolina's economic and greenhouse gas reduction goals?
So the expansion of EVs is a key part of Governor Cooper's clean energy strategy.
Mhm.
He, I'm, I'm just not going to remember the specific goals. I should have looked it up. But he definitely has a specific goal about how many EVs, he was hoping would be on the road by, I don't know, 2025, 2030. I don't even remember the date. And that seemed like a big, when it first came out several years ago, that seemed like a big leap. Like, how are we ever going to get there? But the numbers are actually tracking to put us ahead of that goal. So that's good. Another part of his strategy has been to try to attract businesses that are in the EV space. So, for instance, the state did a big economic development deal within the last 2 years with VinFast,
Mhm.
the Vietnamese electric car maker. Ironically, they will be making cars that they will not be able to sell directly to North Carolina consumers because of the prohibition on direct sales that we have in North Carolina. Maybe we'll revisit that when they start producing cars. Um, and he's definitely all in on the charging infrastructure. So I guess it was through the infrastructure bill, North Carolina got a little over $100 million for charging infrastructure, and that plan is, I think, in place and starting to be rolled out and all of that. So everything everything that a governor is able to access in terms of programs and dollars, federal programs and dollars, he's doing.
Right.
Um, and I think we might have a battery. Do we have a Toyota battery plant coming to North Carolina? I
I
kind of
think
think we
so.
do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
think
yeah,
so. I
yeah,
remember Julie Robertson talking about that a lot when we were
right.
writing our North Carolina Drives Electric
Yeah.
and the
And
excitement around what the
that's
opportunities
right.
bring.
That's right. And the governor was also pushing for the clean trucks rule, hoping to position North Carolina as a place, again, that the clean trucks rule would then invite
Yeah.
um, companies in who could help make that transition. But the legislature put the kibosh on that. So that's the flip side. That's the other dynamic force in North Carolina is that the legislature, the Republican-led legislature, does not like EVs, does not care about EVs, does not support any of the stuff that the governor is doing. I can't even, believe it or not, get the legislature to install a single EV charger. And there are probably a dozen of us, just legislators, that doesn't even include any legislative staff, but there
Mhm.
are probably a dozen of us between the House and the Senate who have EVs.
Mhm.
And, I think we'd love to have a charger at the legislature. And I have gone down that road a couple of times, and the response the flippant response from one Republican leader was, well, if we install an EV charger, then I guess we also have to install a gas pump. Um, and then one of our more conservative House members, in fact, introduced a bill that said everywhere the state installs an electric vehicle charger, they also have to install gas pump. Now, that didn't go anywhere. It was just a statement,
Right.
but that it is it's not a priority for this
Yeah.
Republican majority.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And that kind of gets at what my next question was going to be is how do you bring that experience to the table as an EV owner, right? And that perspective of clean energy and transportation and knowing what policies make sense to bring forward in the General Assembly, as well as like what would you offer to other lawmakers? And it sounds like the biggest thing is making charging infrastructure for EVs a priority right now,
Yeah.
um, especially
Yeah.
as you encourage North Carolinians to make that transition to EVs.
That's right. I mean, the infrastructure just has to be there. It just has to. And thankfully, there is a charger, a level 2 charger just a block and a half away from the General Assembly. So when I do get to Raleigh, that's where I plug in, but I have to, it's a public parking space, so I can only park there for, I think, 2 hours at a time. So I wait, and at the end of the day, I pull my car around and plug it in. So, over the course of the evening, or maybe 2 evenings, I can get a full charge again. As opposed to if I could just park it at the legislature and plug it in, then I could, it could charge in a full day.
Right.
So, I think we just have to continue to be a witness for the technology, and for, not even talking about climate change, but just that, this is the way the market is going. This is the way car manufacturing is going. And we need to be ready for it. We need to be ahead of it. One of the things I love is when it's usually the Southern Alliance for Clean Energy comes and does an EV day, and they let legislators drive all the cool cars. That's, I think putting people in electric vehicles and helping them have that very direct experience is incredibly important, because I think
you're 5 times likely to purchase an EV if you are a passenger rider. So
that's real. I didn't even know that.
yeah.
But once you get in them and you realize how quiet they are, and then somebody steps on the accelerator and you realize how zippy they are,
Yeah.
that can be exciting for a lot of people. So
Agree. I think too, there's area, just hearing you talk about the challenges and the dynamics among the legislators, there's definitely room there for conversations of being able to uplift the rural local business owners, right? Being able to bring them in this conversation, and what could that look like if their businesses had the opportunity to offer that EV charging, and et cetera. So it's definitely interesting. There's definitely room to grow. There's room there for more learning, because it's constantly changing, and we all have to, be willing to learn.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And we've had that reminds me that we've had a couple of other sources of incentives for EV charging beyond the federal infrastructure dollars. So our VW settlement money, has a lot of that has gone for electric vehicle infrastructure charging. And then Duke Energy also had an incentive that, to install EV chargers, they would pay, for all of the electrical work and all the wiring and the upgrade to any panels and anything like that, up to a certain amount. And those two things were both available when I first started having conversations with the legislative leadership, or it was actually the administrative head of the General Assembly building, about this. And we could have actually installed a charger for absolutely zero tax dollars with a combination of the VW settlement money and the Duke Energy incentive, $0. And the answer was still no.
Right.
So,
we'll get there.
Yeah.
We'll get there. So it's been amazing talking to you. It's definitely offered more insight for the dynamics that are in North Carolina. And let's close it out with something fun. So what is your favorite part about owning and driving an EV?
Well, an EV, so the best part about owning an EV is just knowing that I am not contributing to fossil fuel generation and fossil fuel use. I am off that train, and that just makes my heart feel good.
Yeah.
And that is a huge piece of any individual's carbon footprint.
Yes.
And I have just taken it to zero for me, and I love that. What I love most about my particular car now is how incredibly smart this car is. This car is smarter than I am, and it does so many things for me. It just makes driving a simple pleasure in a way that I've never experienced before.
Nice. Great way to close it out.
Yeah.